Okay, I think it's time, so we're going to get started here. Good morning for day 2, for those of you who are a little bleary-eyed from last night. This speech or presentation is on toileting training and strategies for caregivers. It will include the spectrum of from young to adults. It's full spectrum here, and we are very proud to have with us Anh-Tram. Am I pronouncing on?
Anh-Tram.
Anh-Tram. Your chum.
It's funky.
Okay.
You guys will see the spelling, and then I'll tell you again how.
Okay, it's from Continuum Behavioral Health, who have a booth out here. So if you want to speak any further, please probably hold. Do you want to hold the questions to the end? Okay, so feel free to ask questions during. She just has to remember to repeat the questions, but turn off all cell phones, that sort of thing. All right, thank you. Chum.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I've told so many people this, but this is definitely one of my favorite conferences to attend because it's such a nice family reunion feel, and you don't always get that at conferences when you go. And you guys are all such a good, fun time. So thanks for having us. All right, so there you can see how my name is actually spelled and why that was confusing. The T-R-A-M part is pronounced chum, and I go just like chum, like C-H-U-M. I have 2 kids. One is globally has global delays with moderate to severely impacted, and then my oldest is a teenager. That's all I need to say. All right. So we're going to talk about toileting, strategies for toileting. All these strategies that I'm going to talk about are general strategies that can be applicable across all ages. What we're going to learn today is how to identify key considerations for assessments and planning of toilet training. There is so much planning involved before toilet training, and the more you plan, the more information you have, the more likely you'll be able to succeed. We'll also look at common barriers to toilet training, as well as learning supports to overcome those barriers. Specific essential techniques, and how do we identify risks to toilet training, and then also troubleshooting strategies. So there are lots of different types of difficulties families encounter while doing toilet training. There's delayed use of the toilet for urination, delayed use of the toilet for bowel movements, and nighttime accidents. These 3 require normally different strategies or are treated at different times because often the success with toilet training doesn't start with urination, then bowel movements, and nighttime all at once. You know, sometimes you can be toilet trained with voiding your urine, and then you still have bowel movements in your diaper. So oftentimes there's kind of different strategies, different approaches, and the timing of it can depend on what the needs are. And then nighttime is a completely different strategy as well. And we also have dependence on others. Sometimes our kids have loss of skill or aggression, and often there's a lack of generalization, which means across settings, people, different places. So the implications of toileting difficulties. A lot of times, we know it's difficult when they're not toilet trained, but we don't think about how it affects their self-esteem. A lot of our kids that have toileting difficulties, it can affect their self-esteem. It can affect whether or not they can participate in activities, go out with friends, even sometimes make friends. It can impact how the flow of their education, for example, whether or not they can have a lesson within one or 2 hours without having an accident. All those pauses, all those breaks that are needed, that can impact everything, vocational setting, everything. So we look at that, and then we look at how it affects the families. The costs, diapers are expensive. They are so expensive. I remember I couldn't wait till my youngest would be toilet trained, and she just wasn't. And I had so many difficulties, and it was years before I was like, finally, I'm done with diapers. But it adds up. It adds up, and any supports, lifts, interventions that you may need to help toilet train or just even use the toilet as they get bigger. All right, so when you think of toileting, I want you guys not only to think of the actual behavior of going to the bathroom and toilet, but also how it impacts your loved ones. What does it do to their relationships, independence, and dignity? Dignity is a key part because you're constantly vulnerable when you're dependent on other people for these skills. And then I want you guys to also think about in a year, where do you see them? Do you see them toilet trained? Do you see them still needing support? So like I said, preparation's really important. The first thing you guys want to look at is, are they ready? Are they ready to start? How do you know that they're ready? So a couple of things you want to take into consideration. Are they napping and waking up dry? Are they able to go through the night dry? And if they're not, there's a couple other things you might want to look at. Are how long are the periods? Are you noticing a pattern that it's gradually longer and longer and longer before they need a change, or when they do go and void in the diaper, is it soaked? Is it heavy? Because then that indicates the volume of urine that they've been holding. So that shows bladder control. And then, the fun things that kids do sometimes, showing interest in the toilet, peeking in and seeing what you're doing in there, playing with the handle and just making it flush over and over and over and over again, or playing with the toilet paper. Are they interested in that whole room and all the aspects of it? And then also, are they pulling at their diaper when they're wet? That's a sensation. They're recognizing that something's different down there, and that signals to us, they can tell that they have voided. And my favorite is, are they making the specific movements? You know how they get in a corner, squat down, they don't want anyone to see. It's like, well, you could just do that on the toilet. But that's not always the case. But, these are the signs that we're looking for. There are a few others, but these are the primary ones. And it really depends on your kids, and, it can vary a little bit. So we're gonna, first, we talked about the readiness. Now we're gonna talk about barriers to toilet training. There are characteristics that can make it more difficult for learners with neurodevelopmental delays to have independent toileting at the same age of their peers. We have differences in motor planning. That means, can they sequence their movements? Imitation skills. Imitation is so important. We often overlook that skill. Are they able to see something and replicate it? Do they want to model, or do they want to copy what you're doing? Some of the barriers we're looking at are attending skills, whether or not they can just have that joint attention and pay attention to do something. And then if there's a preference or routine, you're often fighting against it when you're toileting. The routine is, I wake up, I get my diaper changed, I have a clean diaper, I eat breakfast, I drink, I get my diaper changed again. So there's also rigidity and routine that we kind of have to work with. And there's often unwanted behaviors when you first start something new and different, lots of resistance. It can present, kicking, screaming, elopement, running away, variety of things. But oftentimes when you're changing the routine, you'll start seeing new behaviors occur. And then any kind of communication delays or deficits. How to communicate is such a huge part of being able to let you guys know that they're ready to go or they need to use the toilet. So barrier one, we have sometimes a slower rate of acquisition, and that just means it's harder to learn. It takes longer to learn things that peers can learn at a typical rate. And the way we kind of work with learners with a slow acquisition rate, and the first one I think can be applied across all strategies, is wearing really simple clothing, like a t-shirt, socks, and dark underwear. And we recommend dark underwear because it's easier to see if an accident happens. So that's just a little tip for you guys. And then you want to have open access and prompting frequent consumption of liquids. So just fill it up. And, you know, you can't have opportunities to use the toilet if there's nothing in there. So you're just gonna wanna give them drinks, make it fun, into a tea party, things like that. And then you want data. And this is kind of when parents hear the word data, they're like, I can't do that. But you actually can. And you know, when you work with someone and they can show you how easy it can be for you, what we're looking at for toilet training is patterns. That's it, just patterns. We're looking at patterns and frequency. So if we're able to identify on what we call a scatter plot, the specific times that your child typically voids, we can target those times for toilet training and have more opportunities. So we call that all baseline data. It's really important so we can pick the right strategy for your kid. And then for slower acquisition rates, we use toileting routine and a sit schedule. We'll go specifically into these strategies, but I'm gonna focus a little bit more on the barriers right now. And then, like all types of toileting, we want an immediate reinforcement. And that just means letting them know that they did it, that they voided in the toilet, and let's make it so valuable that they did that they just want to keep doing it to access the reinforcer over and over again. And then multiple people running the procedure generalization. So you want people to be involved. Everyone in the house that is involved in that routine and care of your child, you want them to be a part of this program. Barrier 2 is competing learning history. So oftentimes, there's a competing learning history. They have learned that they go in their diaper while watching their favorite TV show. And that is a learned behavior. And that interferes with toileting. And then sometimes when we recognize those patterns and we have the data, we have to use shaping procedures for this. It's slower, it's a little bit slower. It involves fading away what the routine that they're used to, and then kind of bringing in the new routine. So we have done diaper fading, where you're literally cutting away parts of the diaper. You're just cutting away so the sensation of wearing a diaper is reduced little by little by little by little. And then once you cut that away, you're often left with just the little tabs up here. So that's how we fade out the diaper for individuals with a competing learning history. And then we have other families that can model toileting, and also social stories. Social stories are a great way to kind of lay out what it is that you're doing and read it like a story so they can see each part individually. So barrier 3 is an aversion to toileting and anxiety. This is also pretty common. The individuals that oftentimes your children, my children, are on so many medications, it interferes with their bowel movements and the regulation. So sometimes there's a history of constipation, bowel movements have been painful, and they have that association with toileting. And then other times, they don't have control. The medication makes them lose muscle control, and they just don't have the same kind of sensations. So what we do, we like to identify the function. Where and why? Where is this coming from? Why is there anxiety with toileting? And then it could be the bathroom space. Bathrooms are kind of scary if you think about it. They're dark, the temperature's a little colder, you can feel that difference, and it's loud. Everything you do in the bathroom is loud. So, we want to look at that. It could be the toilet too. Is it comfortable? Is it too high? Is it too low? We want to look at the actual task, whether there's barriers to the actual task that they are anxious about. Is it an anxiety of having to pull down their pants and requiring that kind of coordination, things like that. And then we're looking at whether or not, if you've tried toileting before, we're looking at that and whether or not reinforcement was utilized in that situation. Because if you are practicing toileting and there's no reinforcement for this new skill, you're less likely to do it. So what we do is we teach the learner relaxation techniques. There's, breathing techniques, things like that, to use while they're on the toilet or even right outside before they enter, depending on what's the cause of the anxiety. And then we kind of use systematic desensitization, which is similar to shaping, where we're not cutting a diaper away here, but we're slowly moving in closer and closer proximity to what's making them anxious. So it becomes normal for them. We normalize everything for them just so they can have success. And this is what we do before we even get them to sit on the toilet. And then we provide reinforcement. Reinforcement isn't just for voiding in the toilet, it's for success. Anytime they make any progress or gains, you want to reinforce that success. So that tells your kid, you're doing a great job, keep it up, let's go, and let's keep going. And that's exactly the message you want to send to them. And oftentimes, I know this is probably the hardest one, but we can't go too fast. We can't rush this process. You have to move it at the rate of your child, your learner. Because if you go too fast, they're just not ready, and they're not going to be able to succeed. And I always tell all families to check with the doctor first. You want to rule out any kind of medical issues that could be causing toileting issues, any kind of medications that could be interfering, if they have a history of irregular bowels or bloody stools, painful urination. You just want to make sure that the doctor has addressed all those issues and said there's nothing that's going to interfere physically with toileting. All right, so here are strategies. These are the strategies, and these are kind of the ones you'll look at and pick from after we have all that information. We have interval training, sit schedule, rewarding successful toileting, dry pants check, reinforcement for dry pants, manipulation of stimulus control, diaper fading, teaching initiations, and error correction for accidents. We're going to go into all of these. So once you kind of figure out the strategy, you're going to pick what they're sitting on. So before we can even start, we got to figure out what are we going to be going on? Is it a potty chair? Is it a seat on top of the toilet? Is it a standard toilet? Do they need a footstool? These little details, you have to figure them all out just to ensure success. And then oftentimes, you have to, or do you need assistance, portable handrails, things like that, and you want to have them ready to go. But again, this all depends on your individual child, the age, how big they are, motor skills, things like that, and your preference. Most importantly, your preference. Do not use something that's going to cause you frustration during toileting. Those folding seats for me were the worst. So you want not only your child to have reduced anxiety and to be relaxed, but you also have to be relaxed. And the things that you're using also have to work for you. And then reinforcement selection. You see, there's so much that goes into toilet training before you even get to the toilet. Reinforcement is selecting reinforcement is just basically something that's going to be so valuable to your child that they're going to want to sit and try to void in the toilet. It can be edibles, it can be activities, but whatever it is, and I suggest you choose the most realistic and most preferred item while you're toilet training. I don't recommend always, a lot of families use iPads, but that also means you're isolating it just for toilet training. you're not going to be able to use the iPad for anything else. So I don't always recommend that. All right, so let's get deeper into interval training. Interval training is one of the most commonly used potty training techniques. It's when you take your child to the bathroom and set intervals. And we decide these intervals based on the baseline data. So, it could be every 30 minutes. We're just gonna bring them to the toilet and they're gonna sit and see if they void or not. So with this method, you're basically preventing any accidents from happening. If we know after they drink a cup of water within 30 minutes, they're gonna pee, we're gonna set the interval to 28 minutes. I'm gonna get them on the potty right beforehand and just wait. So that way, they're coming into contact with success. And they're able to be like, oh, you did it. Here's this amazing, wonderful thing that you get for voiding in the toilet. And then as that goes on, as we have success, we're gonna slowly increase those intervals to build bladder control. So you guys kind of see how intervals, the strategy works. So these are the steps. Like I said, you determine your starting interval. And again, I recommend doing a minute or two before the patterns that you notice. You wanna set your timer. Sometimes I even involve the kids and have them set their timer and have them stop it. Any kind of involvement is great. And then when the timer beeps, get them to the toilet. Just quick, time to go potty, let's go, or time to use the bathroom. And you have them also, not only do you say that to indicate to them that it's time to use the toilet, you want your learner to also request and demand. You want them, so you will prompt them to say toilet, whether it be sign language, whether it be a picture icon, the actual word potty, toilet, whatever it is, but you want them to get in the habit of asking for the toilet. So they build this new routine. So once they're there, you have them sit for 2 to 3 minutes. You actually don't give them any attention or interaction with the strategy. You just let them do their thing. And then while they're seated, they're sitting there, learning to sit on the toilet. If they void, that's great. That's when the attention comes. If they don't, you can still give them attention afterwards for trying. That's okay. You want to reinforce all those interaction or all those opportunities. And then after 2 days of success, you want to increase your interval by 15 minutes. So that's kind of just a standard that we use. Again, you kind of customize it to what works for your child, but that's kind of a standard that we do. All right, so the second strategy is the sit schedule. So this is a little bit more intensive. This is a schedule where they spend we alternate longer periods of sitting on the toilet with little short periods of free play. So they get little breaks. But this is what, this offers the learner opportunities to successfully void. If you're sitting on the potty or the toilet, you're going to go at some point. And then after we do that, we reinforce. We reinforce all the intervals for successfully sitting on the toilet. And then this strategy is best, or is successful for individuals with low muscle tone or late learners, because we're competing with a learning history there, and we're competing with a medical issue with low muscle tone. So these are the steps on how to implement a sit schedule. Once again, you're gonna see that word baseline data. This is where we make all the decisions. You use your baseline data and to figure out how long they're gonna be able to sit on the toilet. So instead of seeing when they void, let's see how long they can sit on the toilet first. And then we're gonna make it a little bit shorter so they can be successful. And then when they're sitting on the potty, because it is a longer interval, you wanna give them access to things like neutral items, like so maybe flipping through a book, things like that. And if They go in the toilet, you offer them praise and reinforcement, and then give them time to play. You know, they're off to do whatever they want to do for a bit, get a break. And if they don't void, you still let them go play for 2 to 3 minutes. It's just alternating back and forth, so you get the opportunities to catch it when it does happen. And if they're successful, we gradually fade it by decreasing the amount of sit time and increasing the amount of play time. All right, manipulation of stimulus control. That is just a fancy way of saying, is there something that signals my kid to use the toilet? And if it's something else, you know, like I said in the beginning, this corner has manipulation of the stimulus control of corner behind the plant. That is what signals to my kid that it's time for them to have a bowel movement because that's where they go. Things like that. So we're gonna look at that and we're gonna kind of switch it. We're gonna transfer the stimulus control to having them go to the toilet by figuring out the tendencies which makes them void outside of the toilet. And then we're gonna gradually change the controlling antecedent, all the things in the environment beforehand, to the toilet. And so that can look like fading, cutting the diapers, even if you have to move the plant closer to the toilet, to the bathroom, things like that. We're gonna look at all those things and kind of figure out a way to change that. And I know it seems hard, but you can change and transfer any kind of stimulus control to another, but through strategies like shaping and reinforcement. So the secret to long-term success and generalization is how we teach initiation. We want our learners to be able to ask for the toilet or help if they need to. So that's what I was saying before each trip. Have them prompt asking for the toilet. And it can be, how many of your kids use sign? Sign language? Okay. Picture icons? Great. Can vocal responses? Asking for the toilet as well? Okay, great. So those are all the things you want them, those are the prompts you're gonna use. You're gonna prompt your child to sign. So it's just putting the hands up, toilet, or getting the picture in their hand and prompting them to give it to you. Or just saying, I need to use the potty, and having them copy you. So that's what that would look like. And remember to honor all requests. Every single time they ask for the toilet, take them to the toilet. It can be so inconvenient, but it's worth it because you don't want to have that behavior of asking to decrease. When you deny it, they're less likely to do it again, every single time. Yes?
What if the requests turn into more, they want attention?
That's a different lecture and presentation. No, but it's common. It's common. They learn I get to go away from whatever I'm doing when I ask for the toilet. Or you're busy and I get your attention. So that comes a little bit later, but we will teach appropriate times. But for now, when you're toilet training, you're going to honor that request. Even if you think it's for attention, you're still gonna take them just so they can learn, I asked for a toilet, I get the toilet. Then, all this fun stuff happens afterwards. Yeah. But I'm happy to talk about that with you afterwards. It's definitely a thing. Okay. You have to do homework, potty. We're gonna work on folding clothes, potty, so it happens. We talked about visual timers. So, tracking those intervals is really important just so you can be successful. And then, like I said, have the kids turn it on, turn it off. They can even choose the color of the timer, things to make that timer fun for them, not aversive, but they also feel a part of it. And then the strategy of first then. So first you sit on the toilet, then you can have fruit snacks. That's simple. So the reason why we use first then is because we are setting a clear expectation of what and when. It's really important to say what's happening and when. First toilet, then iPad. And it sets this contingency. If I do this, then I get this. And then they have to be able to come into contact with that contingency right away. So as soon as they're done on the toilet, they get access to the then portion, whether it be iPad, fruit snacks, TV, songs, whatever it is that they want. But this also helps them build motivation for sitting on the toilet. And then oftentimes, I talk about the difference in language, the language that we use with our kids. There's a difference between first then and if then. You don't think about it, but there is. If then is a little bit more conditional, abstract. It doesn't tell you anything. But first tells you this is coming first, then this. So we always want to catch our learner's success using timed intervals between bathroom trips to check for dry pants. So the reinforcement doesn't just occur when they're voiding in the toilet. We're working on voiding in the toilet. It's two skills that we're actually working on, voiding in the toilet and having dry pants, dry underwear. So we want to be reinforcing that as well. Oftentimes, families forget, because they're so focused on having the kid use the toilet, they forget that there's another skill involved here. That bladder control throughout the whole time, we want to be reinforcing that. We want to let them know that they're doing a great job. So we also schedule these dry pants checks and give them praise and reinforcement for having dry pants. So it's a fun way to kind of keep that party going and keep them involved and excited to toilet train. All right, so super common question. Are devices okay? And then specifically, are devices okay while they're sitting on the toilet? It keeps them on the toilet longer, right? If they're distracted, they can sit there longer, we can have more opportunities to void. I'm going to say no, because what devices do is they pull away the attention of your child onto the screen. When you're locked into that screen, you don't know what's going on, you're not feeling any of the sensations in your body. What we want is our learner to learn not only how to void in the toilet, but all those bodily cues that comes along with it. And another frequently asked question is when and how do you teach wipe? Yes?
For those individuals that use like Go Talk Now as a communication device,
Yes.
BCC, how do you work around?
Well,
That's how he says he needs to go to the
yeah,
bathroom.
so they should always have that access. Communication should always be available. Okay. So that doesn't apply to communication. It applies to playing games on the iPad, like Roblox, things like that. Things that are distracting and entertaining, but I will always say communication devices should always be available.
So put it on guided access just on
Yep.
the Go Talk Now
Yeah.
application
Yeah.
as opposed to allowing him to.
Yes, put it on the settings while you're doing toileting. All right, and then, so we were talking about when and how do you teach wiping. A lot of times, when you're toilet trained, you just go in and clean up, right? I am a firm believer as start as you mean to go on. So even if there's no ability to wipe, you're still gonna prompt or signal to your child that this is part of the routine. Because remember, we're building a brand new routine. Why would we build a routine and not put a crucial step in it? So that may look like you wiping, but then also having their hands move back, so they recognize that movement. And then you can signal to them, oh, we're wiping, and just tell them what they're doing because they can't see. They're only going by feel. And then whether to diaper or not to diaper. When we are picking intervals to do toilet training, no diapers. Put them away. Hide them. Do whatever you need. Give them to the neighbors. Whatever you need to do to get them out of the house. I know with my kids, if you hide something, they'll find it. So you don't want them to have access to those, and you want them out of sight. And then you want to keep, if you can't, and this is something that a lot of parents don't understand, toilet training doesn't have to be 24/7, all day for an entire week. What we're doing is we're setting set times that work for you guys, for your life. If you cannot focus solely on toilet training, then don't do it. Give yourself an hour, 2 hours within that day to focus on it, and then put the diaper back on and continue with your daily activities. I think that's something that a lot of parents forget is because, I say this because what you're doing when you're trying to target toilet training during your entire day, you're gonna miss opportunities. You're gonna be in the car, you're gonna be out, you're gonna be cooking, all those kinds of things that are gonna interfere with success. The more your learner comes into contact with success, the more likely they are to learn toileting. The more errors that occur, the more opportunities where they miss it, that becomes a habit, that becomes a routine. And then we talked about the dry pants and learning to teach our reinforcing for that. And then if we do have to take a step back and use a different strategy, it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay for things to not work. It just means it's not the right strategy and we might have to pick something else. So we can find something that works better for you guys and your kid. That's why we're talking about all these different strategies, because it's not, interval sitting may not work for you. All right, so what to do when there's an accident? That's always fun, because you're working so hard and you're so focused and you miss it for 1 second. It happens so fast. Don't get angry. Take a deep breath, whatever you need to do, or just turn around, pretend you didn't see it, compose yourself, bring the attention back and say, oh, we had an accident, in a very kind of neutral way. You don't want to make this aversive. Let's go to the bathroom. Bring them to the bathroom. Remember to prompt the request for the bathroom. Have them sit, have them help take off their soiled clothing, and then have them sit on the toilet. And then we remind them, hey, we go in the toilet. Pee and poop go in the toilet. And then afterwards, this is something that typically we're rushing so fast to clean it up. You don't want someone to slip in it, you don't want a dog to get there, but you want to be able to clean it up, but also have your child part of the cleaning up process to whatever capacity they can. You can clean it all up, but then have them wipe, and you prompt them through that, help them wipe. Or you clean it up and have them throw the paper towels in the trash. You want them a part of that process. And the most important thing is communication. If we are communicating our expectations from the very beginning, we're being brave and vulnerable. It's hard sometimes to remember to do that. But it's so important. It's so important for successful potty training that you communicate with everyone involved, caregivers, teachers, therapists, nurses, what you're currently doing, so you can all be on the same page. Sometimes there's divorced families. You want to communicate with your ex and tell them what you're doing, just so they can carry it over as well. Generalization means that the child and the adult is displaying the target behavior across all different types of settings, different environments, different toilets. You wouldn't think that using a different toilet is a big deal, but sometimes it is. And then maintenance is important. So once they are having success, they're great. No accidents for 2 weeks. You don't just cut it out. You don't just stop the reinforcement. You want to slowly, gradually fade it away so it doesn't feel as abrupt. So allowing independence and freedom of choice whenever possible is really important. And this is just having your learner be a part of the process. You're not just telling them what to do, but they're actively engaged in choice making. Whether it be they choose what kind of underwear they want to wear, picking out colors for the timers, different types of potty seats, taking them and just having them pick a potty seat makes a huge difference. And then you want them to choose clothing that's slightly looser, so it's easier to go up and down. Don't wear jeans. No jeans. That's gonna be difficult and frustrating for both of you guys. So you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself. And then you want to increase the access of their favorite liquids, popsicles, things like that, special drinks, if they sometimes use, like a lot of kids, they'll drink apple juice and things like that, but they don't get soda as much. Maybe throw that in a little bit on top of everything. Make it really special for them. Make it something exciting and fun. So we're going to talk about, well, before we talk about this, any questions about the strategies I kind of went over? All right, we're good? All right, we're going to talk about now, oh, yes. Oh, strategies for teaching wiping, yes. So strategies for teaching wiping, what are the issues you're having? He doesn't know how to wipe. Great. All right, so he doesn't know how to wipe, but does he understand the space behind him? I think that's a challenge. So that's a barrier for you guys, is understanding that planning, the motor planning, what happens behind you. Is he able to go under tables, walk backwards? Yes? Okay, so he does have some spatial planning back there. So that's actually really nice and good. What you do is you just kind of prompt to the back and be like, hey, where's your hands? You can do, we're gonna work on wiping, and just get them used to that movement in the back as part of the routine. And the wiping part is always precarious because you don't want it to get too messy, which is why I suggest you make sure that your hands are guiding them. And if they make a little bit of a mess, it's not the end of the world, right? Yes?
What about individuals who have sensory issues? So anything that gets on my son's hand, from bubbles to, let alone even like the color of poop, I can say poop in this section.
Yes, we can actually say poop. We can say poop and pee.
So, I mean, it is freaky, and no matter how many times I'm like, we're gonna wash our hands, and it's just that little tiny speck of poop. He'll just write about it for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and that's one of the barriers we talked about, the hypersensitivity. Typically what we do, we don't even start toilet training at that point. We work on desensitization. And so, we would work on gradually having him tolerate things on his hands. Very slowly, we will shape that behavior. We don't want to get to the point where he's anxious and uncomfortable and just feeling so much anxiety, but we want to get it just before that and tolerate, whether it be making it closer, maybe having him smell the soap, having him just poke it real quick, things like that. So there's different ways to desensitize learners to all the materials needed to wash hands and wipe for toileting.
What about dexterity issues, being able to actually?
Right. So dexterity issues is more of an occupational therapist. That's what I would refer to. I'm not an occupational therapist. I know strategies because I've worked with them, and my child has an occupational therapist, but that's something that you want to work with on your occupational therapist. She can identify whether it's what kind of movement. Is it a radial movement, ulnar movement, things like that, and then target strengthening that. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about preventing unwanted behaviors. This is a tough one because sometimes your kids will kick, scream, be resistant, and then you want to look at what you can do differently first. What's causing those behaviors to happen? It's all about prevention. keeping you safe, keeping your child safe. So how do we prevent those behaviors from happening? What do we need to do to change the environment, the home? Is there a specific spot that kind of makes them more anxious? We want to also look at the bathroom. Is it cluttered? Is there too many things in the way that they can't get into the bathroom quickly? We want to also look at the toilet, if it's intimidating, too high, too loud. If it is too loud, you can have you can have a lower flush toilet, or adjust your toilet to decrease the sound. And then it's best to save the fun activities for after the toileting instead of during, while they're on. And and you don't think about this, but make sure they're at a comfortable temperature. They have no pants on. It's gonna be chilly for them, maybe a little chillier for them than for you. So make sure that they're comfortable too. And sometimes the sound of the fans could bother them, or the lights are too bright, or they prefer the dark. Whatever it is for your learner, just change the environment first before you do anything else, because it can make a world of difference. Some other typical prevention strategies that we do, like I said, we set expectations ahead of time. We can use visual timers for toileting. We want to make sure any dangerous items are out of reach. And then we want to make sure all their needs have been met before we do toileting. You don't want to do toileting if they're hungry, or if they're tired and cranky and they haven't slept. They don't have the energy for that. So we want to make sure the needs are met. And then the do statements. That's always important. It's better to say what to do versus what not to do. And I think as a parent, we often forget it. We say, don't do that, don't touch that. But what can they do? Tell them what they can do. Because otherwise, if you don't tell them what to do, they're gonna go do something else, and you have no say over it. You told me not to touch that, then I'm gonna go touch this bigger thing. So take that into consideration with the language that you're using when you're toileting. And then provide transition warnings ahead. So what's great about those timers is whether or not your child is verbal or able to push a button on the timer, they actually understand that contingency, that timer when it goes off, it's time to use the bathroom. It's just a contingency that's built in after a few rounds, and it doesn't take that long. So you can also use the timer for a transition warning. Hey, in 2 minutes, we're gonna use the toilet. In 1 minute, all right, we have 30 seconds to finish up what you're playing with. Or, if they're playing a video game or whatever it is, we're gonna use the toilet. All right, oh, there's a typo, I hate that, sorry. But when aggressive behaviors happen, so I do focus a lot on prevention, and aggression does happen during toileting. And it does come with a learned history, and you're often working to undo that history. But first and foremost, you have to make sure you're safe. So if you do have a child that is aggressive, there's a chance when you start this new routine, that behavior is going to happen. So you want to make sure your hair is tied back, nice and tight, nothing hanging. You want loose clothing, because if they're going to grab, it's harder to rip and things like that. And then you want gloves for protection, or if there's biting, wear long sleeves. I've never had a jean jacket before until I started working my jobs, and it helps. That barrier helps prevent the bites from breaking the skin. So those are things you want to think about if aggression is a behavior that does occur. And then you want anti-slip shoes. Bathrooms get slippery. There's misses, there's accidents, things like that. So all things to consider when you check yourself for when you're starting toileting. And then body positioning is so tricky in the bathroom because a lot of bathrooms are smaller. You don't have the luxury to be behind, slightly to the side, things like that, where it's safer if you have a child that engages in aggression or bite. So how do you do that in a smaller space? Where you want to be is never directly in front. So whatever your bathroom looks like, if you know that there's a probability of aggression, don't stand in front. If it's off to the side, off to the side towards the door. Don't stand off to the side against the wall. The wall, there's no room for mobility. You're stuck there. So you always want to have a space or area behind you where you can move yourself and not engage. So those are things to take into consideration. And you also want your feet slightly wide apart and be balanced, and 1 foot slightly leading, because balance is really important. And then if there are grabs, they grab your clothing, like I said, you are in a position where you can move away. You don't have to do a release or anything, but you can move away. But if by chance a grab does happen, there are releases that you can be trained on. It falls under the professional safety care training. So, if this is something you guys are interested in, I would recommend getting some training on it. So now we're looking at incontinence, hygiene, and tips. So incontinence can lead to a lot of hygiene issues like rashes, yeast infections, desensitization to that area, and UTIs. That's all really painful things for your child to go through, and we want to kind of prevent them from happening. You can do that by using, I'm sure you guys know, protective moisture barrier creams, things like that, antibacterial ointments, keeping it dry with some kind of powder. And there's so many different types of underwear, diapers, pads that you can use within the diaper. I always suggest getting underwear that's about 5% spandex, maybe a little bit more, because it helps keep the plastic back diapers a little quieter. And this is where the self-esteem component falls into place. If you have a learner who's older that needs a diaper, they are so aware of sounds and things going on, whether it be something that will prevent them from learning or make them embarrassed. But if you use spandex underwear, it'll keep that sound, it'll muffle it just a little bit more than as if you had just boxers or something like that. And then we're also looking at different types of diapers, different sizes. There are so many tabs and briefs out there that you can use or buy. But what they all have in common is that little bit of extra material at the top. So, you have an adult child who wears pants, sweatpants. That's his favorite thing. He won't wear jeans or anything. But there's always that tab that sticks up in the back. A lot of times parents will just kind of stuff it in, fold it underneath, something like that. But what I recommend is you fold it in. You fold it into the diaper, and it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but you fold it in because it'll catch anything going out, and it also kind of keep the smell down. It kind of prevents, it's just a little bit more of a barrier. Yes?
So let's talk about some of that. So we use, we now make these fancy diapers that sort of look like underwear.
Mm-hmm.
Or pull up, they're really for adults.
Yes.
But I've also seen online, just like they, for women to go straight to underwear and stick a paper product, they now make actual washable underwear that's designed to catch
Everything.
everything.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about them? Is that reasonable, or are they horrifying?
I don't have tons of experience with that, but I will say it will depend on your child. That's the first thing I'm always going to say. Can they tolerate that snug of a fit? Because it's tighter. Can they tolerate that? Will that be more comfortable for them? Are you able to clean and wash those, because there is a process for the reusable underwear to sanitize and clean, because you don't want the buildup of bacteria. So those are all questions. Does that product fit into your lifestyle and your time? Do you have time to do it? It is time intensive. Those reusable diapers,
It's a little like the decision to wear cloth diapers and baby are reusable,
Right.
environment, time,
yeah, you have to take all those things into consideration and what's doable for you. Yeah. Good. And then something to think about for extra protection, on the bed, waterproof covers, underpads. They make all different types of sizes, things like that. And then for, let's talk about the dignity component. When you have someone who's not a kid, not a little guy, little guys wearing diapers, throwing a diaper out in the trash in a public bathroom is great, fine, no one looks twice. But when you have an older child who is not toilet trained, and they have to change, and you're in the handicap stall going through all that, that little tiny box in there is not gonna fit an adult diaper. So you're gonna have to use the bigger trash can out, where everyone can see. So you want a discreet disposable bag. This is the dignity component that you can ensure for your child. Yeah. And then the wipes. The wipes are important. You can't use baby wipes. You need to buy those extra large wipes. You need full coverage. You want to make sure you can fold it and clean it and wipe it. And then body sprays. I always recommend parents to have that in their to-go bag as some kind of body spray, because you can't always 100% get every speck off. So again, the dignity component. You don't want your child walking through the supermarket or Target and people making faces. That's not a good feeling. It's just not. So, these are kind of little tips and things that I can offer you guys to maintain the self-esteem and dignity of your child. And then, parents often forget this, but you have to take care of yourself. I know later on this afternoon there's a lecture on moms and self-care, but I kind of want to talk about this just a little bit. But you want to take care of yourself, and you want to be realistic about it. As your child grows older, and if you're still having incontinence and toileting issues, you're eventually going to have a mismatch in the weight, in the height, and that is going to impact how you help them on the toilet. So when there's a mismatch, you want to be able to manage the toileting routine safely. So you want to be aware of that mismatch. You also want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. Sleep is so important. And if you have any kind of physical ailments, there's a lot of bending over. If you have back problems, things like that, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, who's going to be able to take care of your kids? And then you want to acknowledge and set the limits. This is probably the hardest part for parents. Parents with kids with special needs have to do everything. We just have to do everything. But that's not humanly possible. And it's a realistic kind of slap in the face when you get hit with one of those, I can't do that, I'm at my limit. But, give yourself some grace. Say, it's okay, I'm human. Obviously, I can't take my kid to all these therapies and do this and manage this and cook and grocery shop and pay the bills. And you have to be able to say, this is where my limit is and I need help. And the way you get help is through finding supports. Oftentimes, your friends before you had kids just don't understand what you're going through. That's why this conference is so great. Every time I'm here, I hear, no matter how many times the parents come here, they're always learning something different, something new. And this is such a great place to start building support. But there's also local organizations, there's Facebook groups, there's so many ways to reach out and get support. There's also, federal government programs within, it's all state dependent. So depending on your state, you can get nursing support. So the other things are just environmental limitations. Not everyone has a huge house where you can have all these things packed and stored and be organized. Everyone has a different situation, space, and you want to kind of look at it and do what's realistic for you. Don't compare yourself to other people. Do what works for you. And then allow yourself some time outside of the home. Oftentimes, your life becomes caregiving. And your identity becomes caregiving. And then you kind of lose all the other things, but you have to do that for yourself. You have to keep an identity for yourself that's outside of caregiving. And then if you can, get some extra help. Even if you are doing it with a mom's group or something, just having someone watch your kids so you can go for a walk and just be with yourself for 20, 30 minutes, anything, just any little thing where you can just kind of get a break is helpful. And so, back to considerations. What if the sensation of a wet or soiled diaper doesn't bother them? They could have the biggest, heaviest diaper hanging down, and they're still running, playing tag, chasing the dog, whatever. They don't care. So, what you have to make them aware of it. It's an awareness thing. You have to prompt them. You have to chase them and say, hey, look at your diaper. Feel how heavy that is. Bring attention to it. This means you had to go to the potty. Things like that. And then he's so quick, how do I know when he or she is going to go? You don't. Sometimes it's a surprise. But what we do with all that baseline data is planning. So you see the patterns of behavior. Not all the opportunities are going to fall within that pattern, but the majority of them will. The body is like clockwork. It likes to do things on a routine. So if you can identify that pattern and kind of stay close to it, you'll have more successful opportunities. All right. We can work on toilet training here at the home or the school, but you're not going to be able to do it in a different setting. So, you have to look at what those limitations are, why that's not possible, and then look at the generalization component as a later goal. Have them toilet trained in the home. Or actually, I've had parents say they'll go in the school, but they won't go at home. That's learned behavior, so that's a history of learning. But, so you want to be able to look at what the barriers are in those situations, whether or not maybe we can work on it even a little bit, even just a little bit, or if it's just going to be strictly in one setting for now, and then we'll generalize later, and that's okay. What if he or she is screaming or refusing to sit on the toilet? I'm never going to force a kid to sit on a toilet. I don't do that. That's traumatic. If they're screaming or sitting on the toilet, that's their way of communicating something is wrong. So we want to go back to the planning stage. We want to look at those barriers and see what is causing this screaming behavior. A lot of times parent thinks, they just don't want to do it and I have to make them, but you have to get to the root of it, the function. Why are they screaming? Why is it just with the toilet? And once we can address that, the screaming will go down. If your learner presents significant challenges during any of the above procedures, consider consultation from a behavior specialist. So there's a link to our certification board, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. They have a list of behavior analysts. You can search by state, and they'll be able to help you with the tougher issues that come with toileting specifically. All right. Wait, hold on. There you go. So those are just basic overall strategies. They're applicable to any age. An adult is going to have things that they prefer and find reinforcing that you can use. So are there any other questions? I know we took them kind of as we were going. Yeah. I'm sorry.
My son is therapies Monday through Friday,
Yes.
and so at the clinic, he's terrified of the potty there and won't go in and try to use it before therapies. It's not the home potty, so he doesn't want to touch it. So if we were going on evening, either in the evening when we get home to decide flowers for that, or before we go in the morning, it's under the ease of pull up for driving or therapy, and come home and
You can work on toileting. If you have, you can go back and forth like that. And the reason why is because you're building contingencies. And as you're building contingencies, you can add them, add the contingency you're gonna stay dry while we're sitting in the car. But that's not what you're working on right now. Right now, you're just working on being able to use the toilet. They don't have the muscle control, the ability to sense that quite yet. So, and you want them to succeed. And it's okay. It's okay to do the toilet with the OT because it's part of their routine. Put them back in a diaper to drive home, or a pad, if you prefer, the water padding on the seat. It's up to you, but I would prefer a diaper because that's already a contingency built. I would prefer that than putting a pad down and having them in the underwear, because then they're learning they can go potty in the underwear because there's a pad there anytime you drive. So I would keep with the contingencies in place for those transitions, and then when you're ready to take off the diaper and put on the underwear and focus on toileting, then do that, and it's okay. Yeah. Yes.
with nighttime potty training, is there any reason to push it? Like, we might have like one or two accidents, a week, in 2 weeks, but she just likes the diaper at night.
There's what?
There's like one or two potty accidents, but she enjoys wearing the diaper at night instead of even trying.
I honestly think it's your preference, but it all depends on when the accidents are occurring. You can also look at environmental factors as to why those accidents are occurring. You're looking at everything before. Is it because she's gulping a giant glass of milk right before bed or something like that? You kind of want to look at all those variables first before you address nighttime. And sometimes there's just, when there's less muscle control. And sometimes you just have to wait till there's more muscle control for the nighttime routines. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else? Yes.
So a lot of, most physicians would tell you that if you have a child with autism or autism-like behaviors and learning deficiencies, and that you're going to be at a very high risk for constipation because of motility issues. So a lot of the families certainly were severely impacted to deal with, sort of the little alchemy to get which type of medication
Right.
you're going to use is just the right, not too much, not too, to make things to go up. What is your, do you suggest sort of waiting till you get a regular, normal bowel routine before doing that as opposed to coming?
Yes, I would always suggest if you can get a regular routine, and I know there's a lot of trial and error. Metamucil, how much, when you should give it to them. There's so many things. The timing of it, everything plays a part. So you're literally like a mad scientist. Do I scoop here in their orange juice in the morning? Did it work? Okay, maybe before bed and let it in their system a little bit. Right. So while I would say it's better to establish regular movements, but also on the flip side, while you are trying to figure all that stuff out, why would you want to put another task of toilet training on yourself? So for the families that are still going through those experimental stages to have their children regular, and it's very intense, it's a lot of work, you're keeping track of stuff, it's a lot of trial and error, focus on that first. Toileting can come a little later, but getting your child healthy, comfortable, constipation is really tough and painful. Focus on that first, and focus on your well-being, because that's going to be a lot to do all at once.
Can I ask you some question?
Absolutely.
For an older child,
I have found dads have a very strong opinion on this. So moms usually defer to the dads on this one, but if they're right, but dad's not around 24/7, you know, and you're the one doing potty training, I would say, what are they used to? What is comfortable for them? Sitting or standing and urinating. There are guards you can place in front for adults to a splash guard essentially that you can use. You can teach your child to tuck, push down while it's happening, but there's also guards to kind of keep it in.
Well, I was, as a father that is teaching, I prefer my son to sit.
Yeah.
It's easier to control. I mean, you have the issues in the mornings where, yeah, sometimes it's gonna get messy. I've tried the guards before, and it's gotten to the point to where like the metal that keeps it stuck to the thing starts to rust and then
Yeah.
not sit right. You gotta replace it. But then, yeah.
Yeah, and
We've been
sometimes
working
they
on it for
fall
8
off.
years.
It's hard. But I mean, my opinion is if it's sitting, like I said, prompt them how to sit and urinate on the toilet. If they can do that and if they can learn how to do that, you don't need those extra supports and you don't need to fumble with them and to worry about them falling into the toilet or out of the toilet and then one more thing you have to clean. So I would always go for the simplest solution first, which is teach your son to navigate down there and direct it. And if that still is causing, sprays and things like that, then you can move to another more intense level.
Well, I know for some clients, I know you mentioned your son has an aversion to sensory things. So actually, I have a client who would not hold his penis to aim because he did not want to get pee on it. And so sitting was a better option because he doesn't have to stand and hold. He can just go and it doesn't have this impact.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And that's the mismatched body types that I'm talking about. Your kids are gonna, my 15-year-old's already up here. So that is a mismatch and you do have to figure out safe ways to lift and position yourself. There are ways. I've worked with adults, full-grown adults, this big, 3 times bigger than me, and have been able to get them to transition from walking, and they are severely impacted, to sitting on the toilet. And it's just a matter of learning, again, the physical safety training teaches you all this, but learning how to do safe lifts, how to position yourself. If you can get help, get help. But if not, because oftentimes you're by yourself, there are ways to do it and to aid your child onto the toilet when they're bigger than you. It's so like moving from a wheelchair. Families use lifts, things like that. Not all families can afford lifts or have the space for them in the toilet. So there are other ways to kind of transition one to the toilet.
Do you recommend, you start looking at the stuff for the elderly, right? So the toilets that kind of sit above your toilet stabilize? Is that a help or is that just for?
That is more about muscle tone and strength. So that depends on whether or not they have the ability to squat and hold themselves to get down to the toilet and then to get up. So that's why those toilets are higher and hovering above the standard toilet. So that having it at a height, you don't have to bend down as much. You don't have to lift up as much, and then you're less likely to fall. So. All right.
Last question.
Yeah.
Is it ever too late?
No.
Is there ever a point where you say, okay, 23?
No. I don't believe it's ever too late to do anything. If it was ever too late to do anything, I probably wouldn't be standing here because I got my BCBA very late.
But I think that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, but no, I don't think it's ever too late. I think, there's a misinformation that skill acquisition slows down after you reach a certain point. It's harder to learn skills. It's all dependent on the individual. The research out there shows it depends on the individual. Everyone's acquisition rate is a little bit different. So it's never too late. Alright. And then, so here's our contact info. If you have any other questions or need anything else, I'm located in Virginia, and that's our address there. My email's the one on the top. And if you want, and here's our social media information. You can keep up to date with, sometimes we post tips and, pictures of our family, not families, but, us training, the new trainings that are out there, the new stuff that's coming out, we'll post on there too as well. All right, thank you.